Hello, my sweet friends. I hope you are all doing well. If you celebrated Labor Day, I hope that you enjoyed your holiday. The tech hubby and I went on a little road trip and we went out to Kansas to spend time with Army son and his beautiful wife. And the boys had a fun project. They installed a new front door for their house, and I got to spend all of my time playing with their new kitten. I am obsessed with Pepper. He is the cutest, and so that was a really fun trip. Now I'm back, and I wanted to work on another project in our series where we've been taking the bases that we created for samples for other projects and kind of reinventing the inserts for them so that we can show the variety and the versatility in how we can use them. For this one, I'm taking a purchased insert and I'm going to add a new cover to it. So we're kind of flipping that around. And I think this is really a great way to utilize some store-bought items, but make them a little bit more functional. I'm also going to be including some tags for my shop. This is the Folk Art Coffee tag printable. I absolutely love it. It's so vintagey and beautiful. And so I'm looking forward to adding that to my project today. So if that sounds good to you, then stick around and we'll make it together. Here's that base that I mentioned. I did pick this up from the Dollar General in their new little crafty section, and it was $3. So I thought it would be fun to check it out. When I opened the package, I see that inside there are all of these pages that have pockets with tags included. And so I was really intrigued by this idea. However, I was concerned that it is all held together by staples. And so there is only one part where they come together, and that makes this binding really tight. So if you were to add your pictures and your journaling, you would get quite a wedge. Now, I'm all for a wedge in a scrapbook or a mini album, but I just don't think that this would be functional. And I believe that if you were to really load this up, that the staples would become fragile or possibly even come apart. But another thing that I really liked about this was that I could take it apart easily. And then even though there are tags, the notches on the top are pretty small. And so you're still going to get a lot of pages showing. So you could add paper or you could add pictures and put your journaling inside. So I feel like it would function better if I take it apart and kind of give it a new structure. And so that's what I'm going to do. To take this apart, I only had to use my craft knife and pull these staples up, and then I just pulled them right out. And so that leaves me with pages that essentially look like this. And so we're going to add these to a more sturdy base, and we're going to build in room on the spines so that we can add all of the finishing details that we want, and it still will function properly. And so here are the parts to that sturdy base, and I'm gonna go with 110-pound cardstock just because I feel like it really needs that extra bit of thickness. And I have two different sizes. One will be a spine on the left, and then two will be the spine on the right. And so I'm going to make my first piece 7 inches high by 10.5 inches wide. I'm scoring it at 5 and also 5.5. So this will act as the left-hand side. And then the two remaining pieces are going to be cut 7 high by 10.25, scored at 5 and 5.25. So now I have two pieces that will fit into here and become a folio. So what I want to do is join these together so that I can open these pages on either side and then continue adding those elements that we've gotten out of the base from Dollar General. So I did go ahead and add my double-sided tape here, and I do want to use our 2 glue combo, and then I will join these together so that these scores work properly and everything is nice and straight and even. Okay, I've got my 2 glues added now, and I'm just going to go ahead and bring these together. I will give you a quick update while I'm working on this portion for our series. I have not figured out the exact start date yet, but I can tell you I am waiting for just one delivery left to come in, and then I can do our haul video. And I always try to share with you guys the supplies that I'm using. In case you're inspired, you will still be able to get all of the items that I'm working with. And so this is coming from a couple of different stores, and I will be able to link all those products at that time. So hopefully next week's video will be that haul, and so then I can share with you all the supplies that I'll be using. Okay, so now we have this assembled, and you can see how it is going to be much more room for all the things we want to add. So the next thing I do want to include is one of the pages. So this did come with 3 of these folded inserts, and so ultimately you will wind up with 6 of the tags. And I think this is such a nice amount of space. This book will be a finished size of 7 inches high by 5 inches wide, so I think that's pretty good for a folio or a mini album. This piece will need to have some kind of binding other than the 2 glues, because it's just going to be centered on this outside cover. And so normally I would consider possibly using this elastic that I use for my traveler's notebooks, but I think it might actually be too thick. I picked this up from the Dollar General as well. I think this is going to work better for this project simply because it is so much narrower. So I want to pull off enough to be able to wrap this around. I want to do this now before I add all the other bulky bits on the side so that it's easier to work with. Now this is going to be removable, but I think if I tie it pretty snug, it will be held in place pretty well. And so basically I'm just going to rest that into the score line and then give it a pretty good knot here so that it's sturdy, but not so tight that it tears the paper. Okay, so let's just position that. Yeah, I think that is going to work great. So go ahead and clip off the excess. I think this is meant for jewelry making. I could be wrong, but it would probably work well for that. So I'm just going to go ahead and pull that knot down to the middle, and this will be the center of our book. So I'm just going to tuck it into this side temporarily while we work on these 2 pages. So I did think it would be great to go through my stash and pull out papers that kind of had the same vibe. There's patterns on here already, and there are also the pattern tags. So I'm just going to sort of coordinate with those. And I pulled from many different paper pads and collections, so there's really no one link to this, but I think if you were to look through your stash, you would probably find something comparable. When I start covering the pages on the inside, I'm not going to be able to use a cardstock border for those envelope portions, so I thought it would be good to continue not having that border on the pages as well, just for a more consistent look. And so the measurement for the pattern paper here is going to be 6 7/8 inch high by 4 7/8 inch wide. And that's going to give me the border of that cardstock that we created the base with. And so I'm just going to set that here. And I'm going to use the offcuts from the cover just to add a layering pattern. Makes it a little bit more interesting. And I get use from those pieces that would become scrap. This is pretty, has a diagonal plaid, but it has a foil going through, so that gives it a little bit of extra detail. So I have a couple of doilies here that are just die cut from white cardstock, and I use more of the offcuts that you'll see throughout this book to add another layering pattern in. So I'm just kind of mixing and matching the scale so that I don't wind up with my book being too busy. And so I'm going to put one on either side. This is going to act as a special photo mat for layering purposes. And I do want to add a couple of those tags from the Printable. And this is going to be a tuck spot in case you want to add something to the book, but you don't want to adhere it to the page. And so I just cut that out, and I added a little bit of stickles to the image for a little extra detail. I put one row of my double-sided tape there, and I will follow that up with an additional line of my Tombow. And so I'm just going to position this a little bit lower and closer to the edge so that anything you put underneath of it will still have plenty of room. And so this is just going to be here. Now, if I were adding other things now, I would wait for this to set up, but since we're just going to continue along here, it doesn't need to be fully dried, but you would want to do that if you're going to go ahead and put something underneath of it as you're working along. See, that would slip right under there. So let's put another one on the other side. This Printable has so many beautiful images. It was difficult to pick the ones for this book, but I think I'm very happy with my choice. I'm just going to eyeball this to get it pretty even as a 2-page layout, and you'll have your photo mat and your tuck spot. Let's go ahead and continue to fill this book up. Now, once we have these pages opened, I want to include those remaining pocket portions. And so this one would go on this side, and I'm going to adhere it to this page. It will measure the width of that page, but look where it's notched at the top. You'll have all of that white cardstock showing. So first I want to include just a little portion of my remaining scrap of that plaid going across the top. And now I can add my pocket. And I am positioning this so that it will fold toward the outside. So I'll get 2 flips out of this page. And then it will have those tags inside, and you won't see the background from that white cardstock. Let's go ahead and add an additional pattern here to this part. And then when you fold that up, you see you'll have that first page, and then this full page, and then this will open all the way outward. So let's go ahead and do the same thing for this side. We're starting with our piece of plaid paper, another piece of that pretty polka dot, and then our final pocket page. And this time the fold is going toward the outside as well. Let's get that lined up. So that will open here as well. So here is that piece, and you can see that it really did fill in very nicely. The only portion of this that I wound up not using was the outside cover from the original album. And so I thought perhaps I would go through and remove these images so that I could add them to other projects. If you didn't want to get the Printable or you didn't have the tags, you could easily use a circle and die cut these images and replace the tags with those. And so you could really get a full book out of this, or you could consider leaving this wrapped around here before you added it to the elastic. And so that would just be one additional layer with images. I didn't really think that it was going to match my tags, so I decided to leave it off, but that would be a good substitute if you wanted to do that. So now when we move to the outside, our measurements are going to change slightly because I don't have those pocket sections showing. I can go ahead and use some cardstock as a border. And so the cardstock is going to measure 6 7/8 inch high by 4 7/8 inch wide. The pattern paper is 6 3/4 high by 4 3/4 wide. And not only is that going to give it that nice border, but it will give it a little bit of extra thickness as well. So that would be a great way to make it more sturdy. I'm gonna go ahead and add the front. Here you can see that I've added a layering pattern for that pretty plaid. I just really love that wood grain. I think it kind of anchors the bottom here and gives it a little bit of depth. So I'm gonna use my doily here. This is one that I just picked up from Maker's Movement, and I'll probably include this in my haul for next week so you guys can check that out. But I really like this more unique shape, and so I want to center this and then position it closer to the top to leave room for my flowers. I'm just gonna go ahead and add that with hot glue. There really isn't a lot of room on there for my double-sided tape, so I think this will work just fine. And then I do want to cover quite a lot of that with the layering pattern. This is once again just die cut from the scraps from those pages inside. I'm going to get the most use out of all of those patterns so they don't wind up in the scrap bin. And now I can have my tag. So this was part of that printable. I wish I could do latte foam art like that. It is so beautiful. But I did go ahead and add this to a thicker piece cardstock so it would be sturdy. Added an eyelet and some baker's twine here. And then I did pop that up on some spacers. And this is going to go pretty much right in the center. That will have a nice border. That pattern showing around. And then here's my flowers. These are all just from my stash from previous design teams. And so I just paired those with some die cut foliage and twine and some netting as I do. And this is pretty trim, delicate stitch satin from Really Reasonable Ribbon. I think it coordinates really well. And so I'm just going to adhere this with my hot glue again because it's a little bit heavy and I want it to be very secure. So this is just really going to anchor that bottom corner. And I do want to use a couple of sequins here just to finish off this cover with a little bit of extra detail. I'll put one here on the tag and then two further down on that base. I'll add those with my Tombow. I did add additional layer of stickles to this as well, so all of those details that I want to show off have a little bit of extra sparkle. I might consider deconstructing that other base that I picked up and see if I can come up with a plan to create that without having to purchase the base in the first place. So that might be something that is coming on down the way a little bit further on. I'm just going to go ahead and clip the excess from that twine there to make it fit better. Okay, so that's all for our project today. We did take a pre-made center and give it a new cover, which kind of goes along with our series of taking our pre-made samples from previous projects and giving them new inserts. We just kind of flipped the script on that and did it in a different order, but I think this turned out really good. I'm very happy with how sturdy it is in that I was able to go through some of my stash papers as well as that printable from my shop. You can find a link to that printable in the description below, as well as links for the beautiful ribbon trim that I'm using. If you're not already, I would love for you to subscribe and join my crafty little family. And as always, I'm wishing you a happy and productive day, and I thank you so much for watching. Bye.